The air in southern Israel was thick with tension long before the first sirens wailed. At 4:17 a.m., a barrage of rockets lit up the sky, slicing through the silence and sending thousands scrambling for shelter. Within minutes, the Iron Dome lit up in response, intercepting dozens, but not all. Several rockets slammed into residential areas near Ashkelon and Sderot, igniting fires and triggering chaos. The Israeli Defense Forces, already stretched thin, scrambled to respond. But what followed wasn't just another attack. It was a coordinated escalation. Reports began trickling in from the Gaza border. Dozens of IDF troops had been ambushed during a routine demolition mission. By midday, the number had climbed, 21 confirmed dead, with more feared trapped beneath collapsed buildings. The explosions weren't random. Hamas fighters had anticipated the IDF's movements, planting explosives and waiting for the moment to strike. One RPG fired at a nearby tank triggered a chain reaction, setting off mines and collapsing two structures. It was the deadliest day for Israeli forces since the October 7th attacks. Inside the Knesset, Prime Minister Netanyahu faced mounting pressure. His approval ratings had already plummeted, and now, with the military reeling and public outrage swelling, his grip on leadership seemed more fragile than ever. "We are at war," he declared in a televised address, voice taut with urgency. But the words felt recycled, echoes of past promises that no longer held weight. Families of hostages still held in Gaza demanded answers. Opposition leaders called for accountability. And outside, the sirens kept screaming. This wasn't just another flare-up. It was a turning point, a moment when the illusion of control shattered and the cost of war came crashing down, not in headlines, but in blood. The footage from the border was harrowing. Smoke billowed from the wreckage of armored vehicles, and medics worked frantically under sniper fire to evacuate the wounded. One soldier, barely conscious, whispered into a body cam, "They knew we were coming." That clip, leaked within hours, went viral across Israeli social media, igniting a firestorm of criticism. How did Hamas anticipate the IDF's movements so precisely? Intelligence officials scrambled to explain, but the damage was done. Trust in the system had cracked. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Hamas released a statement claiming responsibility for the ambush, calling it a message to the occupiers. Their tone was chillingly confident. They spoke of tactical superiority, of knowing Israeli patrol routes, and of exploiting weaknesses in IDF coordination. Analysts began speculating. Had Hamas intercepted communications? Were insiders feeding them intel? The questions piled up, and answers remained elusive. Back in Tel Aviv, protests erupted outside the Ministry of Defense. Families of fallen soldiers demanded transparency. "Our sons are not cannon fodder," one mother shouted through tears. The crowd echoed her pain. Netanyahu's cabinet convened emergency meetings, but leaks suggested deep divisions. Defense Minister Gallant reportedly clashed with top generals over strategy. Some pushed for a full-scale ground invasion. Others warned it would be a trap. The contrast was stark. On one side, a government scrambling to maintain control. On the other, a militant group growing bolder by the hour. And in between, civilians, Israeli and Palestinian, caught in the crossfire. The streets buzzed with fear, frustration, and a growing sense that something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about rockets anymore. It was about perception, power, and the unraveling of a narrative that had long defined the region. As dusk settled over Jerusalem, the political fallout intensified. Netanyahu's inner circle was in damage control mode, issuing statements that emphasized resilience and retaliation. But behind closed doors, the mood was anything but confident. Leaked transcripts revealed heated exchanges between senior officials, some accusing the prime minister of ignoring intelligence briefings that warned of Hamas's growing capabilities. The narrative of strength was cracking, and the opposition seized the moment. Yair Lapid, leader of the opposition, addressed the nation with a calm but piercing tone. "This government has failed to protect its citizens and its soldiers," he said. His words resonated. Polls conducted overnight showed a dramatic shift in public sentiment. Nearly 60% of respondents believe Netanyahu's leadership was directly responsible for the IDF's vulnerability. The contrast between the government's rhetoric and the reality on the ground was becoming impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, international reactions poured in. The U.S. called for restraint, while European leaders expressed concern over the escalating violence. But in Gaza, Hamas doubled down. Another wave of rockets was launched at dawn, targeting military installations near Beersheba. This time, the Iron Dome faltered. 2 missiles struck a command center, killing 5 officers and injuring dozens. The psychological impact was profound. Soldiers began questioning their safety, and morale dipped sharply. In the streets, the tension was palpable. Markets were half empty, schools closed, and families huddled in bomb shelters. The sense of normalcy had vanished. And yet, amid the fear, a quiet defiance emerged. Citizens shared videos of resilience, children singing in shelters, volunteers distributing food, medics working round the clock. It was a reminder that even in crisis, humanity persists. But the question lingered: how long could they endure, and at what cost? The IDF launched retaliatory airstrikes overnight, targeting what they claimed were Hamas command centers and weapons depots. The explosions lit up the Gaza skyline, sending plumes of smoke into the early morning haze. But on the ground, the reality was far more complex. Residential buildings were reduced to rubble, and hospitals overflowed with casualties. The Israeli government insisted the strikes were precise, but humanitarian groups painted a different picture, one of indiscriminate destruction and mounting civilian tolls. In Rafah, a family of 6 was pulled from the debris of their home. Only 2 survived. Their story, captured by a freelance journalist, spread rapidly across international media. The contrast was jarring. While Israeli officials spoke of tactical success, the images told a story of human suffering. And that contrast began to shift global opinion. Protests erupted in London, Paris, and New York, demanding an immediate ceasefire. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session, but resolutions stalled amid political gridlock. Inside Israel, the mood was conflicted. Some citizens rallied behind the government, calling for decisive action. Others questioned the cost. "We are losing our sons, and we are burying our conscience," said one former IDF officer in a televised interview. His words struck a nerve. The debate wasn't just about strategy, it was about identity. What kind of nation did Israel want to be in the face of relentless conflict? Meanwhile, Hamas released drone footage showing their fighters navigating tunnels beneath Gaza, evading airstrikes and regrouping. It was a chilling reminder that despite Israel's technological edge, the enemy was adapting. The war was no longer just above ground, it was subterranean, psychological, and deeply personal. And as both sides dug in, the prospect of resolution seemed more distant than ever. By the end of the week, the death toll had climbed. Israeli media confirmed over 70 IDF soldiers killed in the latest wave of attacks, with dozens more critically injured. Hamas, emboldened by its tactical success, released another video, fighters emerging from tunnels, launching mortars, then vanishing underground. The footage was raw, unfiltered, and designed to provoke. It worked. Israeli society was rattled, not just by the losses, but by the symbolism. The enemy wasn't just surviving, they were thriving. Netanyahu's government, cornered by criticism and mounting casualties, authorized a controversial new directive, targeted assassinations of Hamas leadership, even if embedded in civilian zones. The backlash was immediate. Human rights organizations condemned the move, warning of war crimes and irreversible damage. But inside Israel, the mood had shifted. Fear had turned to fury. "We will not be humiliated," read one headline in a major daily. The rhetoric was escalating, and so was the violence. In Gaza, the humanitarian crisis deepened. Power outages, water shortages, and overwhelmed hospitals painted a grim picture. Yet, amid the devastation, Hamas continued to project strength. Their spokesman spoke of resistance, of legacy, of martyrdom. It was a narrative that resonated with some, even as others begged for peace. The duality was haunting, hope and hatred intertwined. And in Israel, the question loomed. What now? The military was mobilizing for a prolonged campaign, but the scars of recent losses ran deep. Netanyahu's leadership hung by a thread, and whispers of resignation grew louder. The nation stood at a crossroads, between vengeance and reflection, between escalation and diplomacy. The silence between sirens became more telling than the blasts themselves. It was a silence filled with grief, resolve, and the weight of choices that could shape generations.